it's Thursday. Now, here is today's project, and I know what you're going to say. What a cute little raven. Wrong. It's crochet. My patrons voted for it, and I like to give them what they want. So that is what we're making today. Okay, let's talk about tools and materials. So for today's project, you are going to need 8-ply 100% acrylic yarn, and you're going to need one color for your crow and one color for your key, as well as a little bit of white just to make the whites of his eyes. So particularly if you're making your crow in black, this will be necessary to help emphasize your eyes. You're also going to need a pair of 20mm safety eyes, and I will say that smaller than this is absolutely fine, but I probably wouldn't go any bigger than this, as well as a 3.5mm hook, scissors, pins and needles, and some stuffing. But that's it. I would just also like to say you could also use some wire, some pipe cleaner, or like pop stick to reinforce your legs, but the one I'm making today and this one here doesn't have any additional reinforcement in it. He's a little wobbly, but he does stand up. So a written version of today's pattern will be made available on my Etsy and will also be sent out to my patrons. I will leave a link to both in the description down below for anybody who is interested. Okay, so here is the little crow we're going to be making today. Now, I know that this one's not black and the one I'm making today isn't black either. That's just because black doesn't show up particularly well on camera and I need you to actually be able to see what I'm doing. So we're going to start today by making his main body nugget, which means we'll be starting at the end of the beak and working our way down towards the tip of the tail. So I'm going to grab my crow color and we're going to start by making a magic ring of 6. So that is the tip of his beak. And we're then just going to carry on building up the next 15 rows of our crow. So what you may notice as you work up your crow is that a lot of our increases are happening in lots of 3 instead of in lots of 6. So the impact that's going to have on our shape is we're going to end up with a longer, more triangular cone than if we increased by lots of 6, which would give us a flatter, more spherical shape. So there we are at the end of row 16. And at this point, we're going to stop and position our eyes. So at this point, if I'm looking at the open end of it, up here is the top of our bird, and here is the bottom of our bird. From the side, it's a little bit more obvious. So we've got this flat edge along the top of the head. So when I go to position my eyes, we're going to put one in on either side, both into row 8. So I'm going to start by counting 8 rows back from our magic ring. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pop one in on this side, flip it over. So then I'm going to look directly at my crow and identify that middle point down the middle of the head. Just make sure that the eyes are an even distance the whole way along from that line. There should be 6 or 7 stitches visible between the edges of them if you're using eyes the same size as mine. Now, as mentioned during tools and materials, I think smaller eyes would also work fine for this pattern, but I would not go any bigger than these. So when you're happy with the position of your eyes, snap the backs on. So from here, we're going to carry on working up the body of the bird and we'll be strategically placing decreases in that triangular formation to narrow him down to a point. So as we reach the end of the crow, we are going to stuff fairly firmly as we go. So we narrow our opening down to 6 and then we finish off. So you should still have this tiny hole at the bottom of your bird. And we're just going to use our remaining tail and pull it through each of those remaining stitches. I use the front loops only for this. And then give it a little tug and it acts like a little reverse magic ring. And just tuck that end away inside your burb. So there is our nice basic bird nugget. Not a chicken nugget though, no, crow nugget, that we're going to add wings and feet to. So pop that to one side for now. So next up, we are going to make his little drumsticks. Each foot has 4 toes on it, 3 at the front and 1 at the back. And then we work up this little stem of a leg with a little martini glass on top to form where it attaches to the body. And for these, I'm going to continue working in my purple. So we are going to start with a magic ring of 6. Like so. And then in the next round, we're going to form his little toes. So in the next row, we're going to form his claws. So those claws are formed by putting a treble crochet into the front loop of your stitch and then a slip stitch into the back loop of the same stitch. So not to be confused with the double treble. The treble is when you yarn over your hook 4 times. So like so. We're then going to insert our hook into the front loop of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. which leaves us with 6 loops in total on our hook. We're then going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2, yarn over and pull through the final 2. So that is what my treble treble currently looks like. I'm then going to fold that forward and find the back loop of the same stitch that we're working into now, insert my hook into it and work a little slip stitch. So there is my first claw. So with the first one done, we are now going to work another one in each of the next 2 stitches. If you're finding that treble treble too hard to work with, you can replace it with a shorter variant. So the double treble, the regular treble, even just a double crochet, but keep in mind that your crow's toes will get smaller the smaller stitch you use for this. So there are the 3 claws at the front of his foot. We're then going to work a single crochet through both loops of the next stitch. And we should have 2 stitches remaining in our starting magic ring. So in the next one, we're going to work 1 final claw, exactly the same way we worked the ones at the front. So treble treble crochet in that front loop. And then a slip stitch into the back loop. And then in that final stitch, working through both loops, we're just going to plonk a single crochet. All right, so there is the start of your little crow foot. Hopefully everybody's still with me after that. So in the next few rows, we'll be working up the stem of his leg. So in the next row in particular, you should note that we are only going to work into those treble crochets and single crochets. We do not work into the slip stitches. For our first stitch, we actually have single crochet 3 together. So in those 3 toes, there are 3 treble crochets, and I'm just going to pick up the front loop from each of those 3 treble crochets, which does require me to skew my work around a little bit. But you'll see there I've picked up all 3, and that's my active loop there. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, leaving me with 2 on my hook, and then yarn over, pull through both of them to finish off the stitch. So that is my single crochet 3 together. Then I'm going to work a single crochet into the first single crochet from round 2, and then a single crochet into the treble treble crochet that formed the back claw of the foot. Being careful to skip the slip stitch, I'm going to work a single crochet into the second single crochet from round 2. So that will leave you with this tiny, tiny round of just 4 stitches. So what I'm going to do to help me see what's going on a little bit better is I'm going to trim off my starting tail and tuck it down inside the foot now so it doesn't confuse me as I try to do what we're going to do next. So that is what our little foot currently looks like. So now we just need to add some height to his leg. To do that, we are going to do 4 rounds of 4 single crochet in each round. So that is a combined total of 16 stitches. Now, as you work these, be careful to only work through 1 layer of your stitches, or you'll find that you quickly run out. There we go. So it's starting to look very, very leg. So now we just need to build that little martini glass at the top that's going to help us attach this leg to the body. So in order to do that, we are going to work 2 repeats of an increase and then a single crochet. So that gets our round up to 6 stitches in total. And then in our final row, we're going to do 2 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet, which will get us up to 8 stitches around. And finish off. So note that I'm not stuffing this piece at all. If you wanted to include some wire to give it a little bit of added support, you could thread that through at this point, but I'm just going to leave mine as is. It should stand up on its own. Like, they are a relatively stable piece, even if it's not particularly strong. And we are going to need 2 of those. See, I kind of want to make these as like hook stands, maybe with a little bit of weight in the end so that your hook can just like stand up like a chicken leg. Anyway, so we're going to pop those to one side for now. So next up, we are going to be making his little wings. Once again in our crow color, we're going to start by working up 3 rows to build up a disc that is 18 single crochet around. Now, it should be noted that at this point, there is a difference between the left wing and the right wing. So we're going to make the right wing first. So we're going to continue around and work up the longer feathers that form like his flight feathers down the wing. So we start by working a half double crochet, which is where you yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. That's the first stitch. We're going to work 2 different stitches into the next one. So the first one is a double crochet. That's where you yarn over once, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I've got 3 on my hook again, but this time I'm going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, then yarn over and pull through the next 2. So there is a double crochet, and then, as I said, into the same stitch, we're going to work a treble crochet, which is where you yarn over twice, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook at this point. Yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2, then yarn over and pull through the final 2. So there is the start of our wing. So now in the next stitch, we are once again going to work 2 different stitches. The first one is a double treble, which is where you yarn over 3 times. Insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So you should have 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2. And then just repeat that 2 loops at a time until you're left with just 1 loop on your hook. So there is our double treble. Then into the same stitch, we're going to work a treble treble, which is where you yarn over 4 times. Now these are the same as the ones we did to make the claws on the feet. Insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. We should have 6 loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through 2 at a time until you're left with just 1 on your hook. So there is our treble treble. So we have 2 more feathers to work in this wing. So in the next stitch, we're going to work another treble treble crochet. So yarn over 4 times, insert your hook, then work it up. And then in the next one, we're going to work our last feather, which is going to be a quadruple treble crochet. So yarn over 5 times, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2 at a time until you're left with just 1. So there is our quadruple treble. Now, for anybody who's interested, the longest stitch I've ever done involved yarning over 100 times and worked up to be just over 1 meter long. That was nearly a video all on its own. So that's the end of this wing, and we are going to finish off. I suggest you leave a decent sized tail because we are going to weave it back to the base of the wing. So there is our right wing, and now we're going to make our left wing. So the left wing is basically the same with a slight adjustment after row 3. So I'm going to start by working up the same 3 rows as we did for our right wing. So there we are at the end of row 3 for our left wing. So now there is just a slight difference between this one and the right wing. So what we are going to do is slip stitch into the next stitch, and then chain 1 and turn. Then you're going to work the exact same pin feathers in the exact same order as we did for our right wing. So I've done it this way where we're flipping the work instead of just changing the order of the feathers, because I thought it would be a little bit easier for you to follow the same video along in the exact order it was shown, instead of having to work out which stitch goes where. And we're going to finish off again. Then we're going to finish off again, leaving a decent tail to allow us to weave that end in. So I'm going to clean these 2 pieces up now just by weaving those long tails back through the loops on top of those stitches so it can be tucked away inside the base of the wing. All right, so those are the only pieces we need to assemble our bird. And now all we need to do is make the key. For anybody not interested in making the key, just skip this chapter and go to the next bit. So for my key, I am changing to using this bright yellow, and I'm going to start with a magic ring, and into it I'm going to put 15 single crochet. Now when you pull your magic ring tight, Don't pull too hard. You want to form a ring of stitches with this center opening. So that is forming that eye of our key. I don't know if there's a name for that, but the hole in the middle of the top of the key, that's what that is. So I'm then going to just slip stitch into our first stitch to close that ring off, like so. So there is the first part of our key. We're then going to chain 10, like so, and turn. So starting in the second chain from our hook, we're going to work 2 slip stitches along our chains. I'm then going to slip stitch the next 2 chains together. So by that, I mean I'm going to insert my hook into both of the next 2 chains. It's kind of like a slip stitch decrease. What that's going to do is make like the tooth of the key want to stand off in a different direction. I'm then going to slip stitch into the next chain. So now we need to create our second tooth. So we're going to chain 4. So this raggedy thing is what you should currently have. And we're going to turn and work down this new chain that we've just created. So starting in the second chain from our hook, work 2 slip stitches down. That should leave you with 1 left of your new chain. And we're going to insert your hook through that chain, as well as the next chain along our base. And we're going to slip stitch 2 together again. So again, it's like a decrease made with slip stitches. And once again, that's going to help lock this in at the correct angle. So you should have 3 chains left of our original chains, and we're going to slip stitch into each of them. So, and then see here where we slip stitched before, we're just going to slip stitch into there again and finish off. So your piece will probably look a little bit like this unknown character. And what we're going to do is just grab our loop and grab the end of our key and give it a little tug, tug each of the teeth out straight as well. And it'll form into your little key shape. So these 2 tails, because we're attaching this to the beak, we'll be able to tuck those away inside the crow so you can't really see them. But that is how I make my key. So it is time to assemble our bits. So we're going to start by attaching our legs. So what I want you to do is in the direction of that middle toe, I want you to flatten the opening of your leg, both of them. Then we're going to count backwards from the tip of our beak until we hit row 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I'm going to mark this row with a pin you can actually see. Then I'm going to mark row 19 as well. I'm going to do that on both sides. So here I've got row 15, row 15. So keeping in mind that our 3 toes face the front, we're going to take our squished leg and we're going to line the top of it up between the row 14 and row 19. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 pin it kind of in the middle of the rows it's going to line up with. Note that I'm vertically centered. And then I'm going to just pivot it so that the flat of the foot lines up with the tip of the tail. It's kind of a cheat, but basically that tail is going to give us a 3rd point, like a tripod on the ground that will help our crow balance. I'm then going to lock that into position by adding my pins back in. I'm going to turn over and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So line up vertically centered between those 2 points, pop 1 pin in through the middle, and then line up the flat of the foot with the tail and add some extra pins. And check to make sure your crow can stand. I'm giving away all the trade secrets here, but tails are the best for making gravity-defying looking creatures. So that is where our legs are going to go. We sew on just along the top of the leg. And I'm just going to sew those on really quickly now. So just in case anybody's wondering what's up with my nails here, basically I had 1 chip off while the others all still looked really solid. And I just couldn't bring myself to have to remove the other 9, which still looked fine. But I also just didn't want to do the same thing again. I wanted to move on to something. I wanted to move on and do the next thing. So that's how this came about. As they chip off, I'll probably fill them in with different patterns and whatnot. It's not particularly interesting, but that's what happened there. So just like that. Now, this is already kind of a serviceable crow, but we're not done adding decorations to him yet. So for the wings, to work out which one's which, you'll note that these long stitches point in a certain direction. So they either point this way or on our other one, they point this way. So they should always point up towards the center of the back. So mine go this way here. I'm going to count down to row 13 on my crow, and I'm going to line up part of this base circle with row 13. One pin to start with, and then I'm going to pivot it around so that the tip of the wing hits kind of the second last row on the body there. The tail should just poke out the end. So you'll note that the top of the wing does fold over the top of where we've attached our little sneaky drumstick there. So there's our first one. I'm going to follow that row 13 around to save me from having to count. Once again, I'm just going to put one little pivoting pin in at the top of the wing and then rotate it around so that the tips meet. I'm going to make sure he still stands. So that is our base position, and then I'm just going to adjust each wing slightly until I'm happy with how they're positioned. When I'm happy with that wing position, I'm going to sew on around the shoulder of each wing. So after we've tucked all of our ends in, you're left with your little crow. I'm then going to take just a little bit of white and I'm going to stitch on the whites of his eyes. So there are the whites of his eyes. And finally, we are going to give him his little bit of mischief. So I'm just going to pin that key to the end of his beak, slightly underneath. And then I'm going to use a little bit of my yellow or whatever color you used for your key to stitch that on as well. And there is your finished crow. Now I'm already trying to think of names for these guys. So I'm caught somewhere between Pain and Panic or Mischief and Mayhem. You guys will have to let me know in the comments which name you like better, or if there is a different suggestion, I'd love to hear it. Other than that, I will see you next week. Okay, bye.